and good morning, everyone joining us online from across the region. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you this morning. My name is Antoinette Tesha. I'm the director for the Textile and Apparel Industry Program of Gatsby Africa. Gatsby is a not-for-profit organization. We are in the business of creating impact through interventions at various industries, within various industries. Today, I have the pleasure to welcome you to a textile and apparel event, which is co-hosted with my colleague, Joseph. Okay, so sorry for starting a bit late. We were giving different participants an opportunity to join this morning. And so this morning we're here to introduce a long-term friend of Gatsby. This is the Tukatech team from various parts across the world. I will give them the opportunity to introduce themselves quite soon. Before that, though, let me invite my colleague Joseph to give us a bit of an overview of why we're in this webinar today and what we hope to get out of it. Karibu, Joseph.
Thank you very much, Antoinette. Joseph Nyagari is my name, part of the textile and apparel team at Gatsby Africa. And here at Gatsby, we do organize informational webinars once in a while, targeting the textile and apparel industry. Today's webinar is special because we are targeting the fashion SMEs across East Africa. And we sincerely appreciate for those who have been able to plug in so far. We had over 40 confirmed registrants. We're still expecting a few more to join in. It is our hope that you will find this session useful, you will enjoy, and participate as much as possible. Welcome.
Thank you. So for some housekeeping, we have a Q&A portal today on the Zoom, where you can put in any questions. When the team from Tukatech is presenting, we'll probably mute you, but after that, please just put your questions in the chat box. We'll be monitoring it. Then we'll have a Q&A session, which Savannah will guide us, will prompt us once she's ready. So without further ado, let me hand over to Madam Nimco Adam to introduce Tukatech and what they do. And thank you again for joining us this early Friday morning. Karibuni.
Thank you so much, Antoinette. And let me thank all of you for joining us. Tuka team deeply appreciate the Gatsby organization support in putting this webinar together. My name is Nimco Adam, founder and designer of Carl Designs, based in Kenya, Los Angeles, and Mogadishu. I'm thrilled to be the first ambassador for Tukatech in Africa, an innovative fashion and lifestyle technology company. Tukatech solutions are used for product design, development, and garment manufacturing by leading global brands. I'm spearheading the expansion of Tukatech technologies into the vibrant African market, making it accessible to creatives and opening the opportunities and advantages of 3D technology to everybody in Africa. My brothers and sisters, mandugu zangu nawapenda. I am excited to bring 3D technology to my continent and to work with ambitious young creatives to harness their ideas and talent using technical technologies and smart manufacturing. So I'll hand over to Savannah, my co-worker in Los Angeles. It's 11 o'clock. We appreciate you so much, Savannah. And here in South Korea, it's afternoon, I guess it's morning in East Africa. Welcome, and Savannah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nima, and thank you so much, Antoinette and the team. I'll share my screen. So let's get going. So today we're going to talk about how we reverse the process and do demand manufacturing in the apparel industry. So as was said, I am with Tukatech. We are a Los Angeles-based fashion technology company. Our technology covers everything from CAD, 2D pattern making on the computer to 3D visualization and machinery for production. So it's really an end-to-end solution for creatives, for developers, technical people, and then the producers themselves. So I wanted to give sort of an overview of the technology and what it does, how it enables people to reverse the process, as shown in the title, from the traditional cut, sew, or make things and then sell them, compared to selling things before they are made. So first, before we get into the technology, I want to talk about some of the challenges facing the fashion industry. I tried to focus on things that are pretty global, no matter where you're located, no matter what side of the development process you're on. These are, I think, pretty universal problems that people face. Things like inventory, just having all kinds of unsold goods, things that are already made, things that are sitting in a store, a boutique, or on a website in a warehouse, and you're hoping that they sell, and maybe they didn't get in front of the customer right in time. Maybe there were too many that were purchased, and now you just have excess inventory that you're trying to sell off. There's any number of reasons why there's too many goods and not enough customers to buy them. Unfortunately, at that point, the only real options are to just discount things until they're at a price that hopefully someone will buy, or you just have to throw them away. Or, now people are starting to think about how to upcycle and recycle, but for the most part, inventory, if it's unsold, it a lot of the times just becomes trash. Material wastage in development and manufacturing, beyond just the final product that, if it doesn't get sold, ends up in landfills, even in the development process, through sample making, through production, when you're talking about material wastage, if things aren't planned properly, there's a ton of wastage that happens in development and manufacturing. Speed to market sort of ties into this as well. It used to be that it would take 18 months, sometimes longer, 2 years to develop, to design and put a line out there and then sell it. But now people are trying to shorten their cycle time to 6 months. If something starts going viral on Instagram or TikTok, all of a sudden things have to adapt, and suddenly you're like, how do I get that product in my store? How do I get this in my product line? There's the customer, when they see things, they want things right away. And so that speed to market now is ever present, constantly top of mind for people. And so we simply don't have the same amount of time to develop. So it's hard to meet demand for speed to market when things are still done manually. So this is where technology really comes in. The consumer demand, as I said, but it's not just the speed, but it's also more SKUs, fewer units. So it used to be that when you would do the sample development, it would cost thousands of dollars to get one sample or to get a few prototypes for a style. And the manufacturers could absorb that cost because they were getting such large order quantities. They get 500,000 pieces, or even in the millions of pieces. So a few $1,000s would sort of, over the number of units that you would end up producing, you could amortize that to where it only costs maybe a few cents per garment. But now stores want to have a really big selection, whether that's an online store and you want to be able to just have your customers scroll, or you want your Instagram, if you're doing direct that way, you want it to be full and populated with new styles. Whatever it is, people just want to see new items constantly, but the quantities are a lot smaller. So the cost of development is still the same. It still costs as much to develop a new style, but there's not as many units in an order to amortize that cost over. So it becomes a lot more expensive proportional to the orders that people are getting. So the sample development it just becomes really cumbersome, and it's starting to really affect people because of that. The cost of labor is increasing globally. This is a problem that we in the United States, and I live in Los Angeles, we have one of the most expensive labor markets globally. But this isn't just a problem in the West. I mean, this is, I went to Bangladesh a few years ago, and they were famous, I think, for a long time as being the place to go when you're just looking for cheap labor. But that chasing the cheap needle, as we call it, what ends up happening is, I mean, people don't want to just be the place where you go for cheap labor. They want to be a tech forward. They want to be a tech forward company. They want to develop, they want to drive innovation. And eventually this is just what happens. It just gets more and more expensive to produce anywhere. And that can't be the only way that places are competitive, is just competing on cost of labor, because it's something that's constantly going up and something that constantly has to be reaccounted for. So that's something that we're dealing with pretty acutely in LA, where Tukatech is based. But this is something that even in other parts of the world, where there's sort of an attitude that, well, to get more productivity, we'll just hire on 5 more people. Well, that only works for so long. Eventually, you have to have the right tools in place so that those people can be more productive, so that they're able to get more done faster, that they can do it with less stress. And overall, I think this is sort of just it's a global problem. Lack of process engineering and working in what we call silos, where data is not reusable. So in these processes, especially with globalization, there tends to be like the designer is in one place, the manufacturer is in one place, and there's a disconnect of the data where people don't talk about what they're doing and what they want to see. And the communication breakdown gets very frustrating. And the designer might work really, really hard to make a beautiful sketch that the manufacturer can use, but then they need different information. So they end up scrapping it and starting over. And so this disconnect can be very frustrating for people, but then it also can add to those time and cost issues that everybody is facing. And this isn't necessarily just a lack of technology problem. People can have technology, but if it's not engineered well, then these communication breakdowns still happen. So first I want to talk about kind of the old way of manufacturing, or the traditional process of manufacturing. So I broke it down into very simply 6 steps. We start with design. This is where the sketching is happening, and then we develop. We have the CAD pattern making, the 3D sample, or even not 3D sample making, but the sample making and fit development. We make the order, and then we put it in a store, and we hope that it sells. Again, going back to inventory, now you're finally getting in front of the customer, and that's when the reality comes. And then if it doesn't sell, that's where you discount and then discard if it ends up just sitting there. So with design and development, there's no shortage of creative people in the fashion industry. People have lots of beautiful ideas for new prints and new fabrics, new silhouettes. So design and development, especially with the technology, which I'll explain a little bit more in a few minutes, we can do this part all day. It's kind of just saying, like, people have ideas constantly and we always are coming up with new things. But if we don't have the process set up to where we can manufacture without waste, without it being so slow, then all these ideas, they just kind of go to waste, which is very sad. So much inventory. I mean, that's kind of what we were talking about a little while ago. And then of course the problem with waste ultimately in retail. So what we're trying to do with this idea of reverse the process is we want to ideally completely eliminate steps 5 and 6, where you discount and then discard. Ideally, you wouldn't have all of these products that have to be discounted and discarded, because on steps 3 and 4, you're actually reversing it so that you can sell something before you make it. So when that's the case, the only inventory you have is just the raw materials. And so that reverse process looks more like this, where you have design, develop, sell, and then make the garments. So now I want to go through each of these steps and talk about the types of technology that are available for each of these steps and how they help with the process engineering. And then at the end, I'll have some case studies, some people who really are using these tools to expedite their design and development and manufacturing process. So at the design stage, this is where you're doing your print and artwork design, sketching and prototyping, 3D design and visualization, and then your tech packs. So there's software, like the thumbnail that you see here, where you can digitally design prints, create colorways, even if you're able to work with people who develop textiles, you can even engineer different weave patterns and colorways. The 3D visualization at this stage is really sort of a replacement for traditional sketching. You can take a 3D template and take that realistic looking fabric and see what happens when I put it at this scale, what happens when I put it at this color. So it is like sketching, but it's a very realistic, hands-on way. And you can even, if you're working with photorealistic fabric, digital fabric swatches, then it gives you a really nice picture of what you're going to get before you even get into the more technical side of things. This is a little bit of that 3D visualization. So this is Illustrator working in conjunction with the 3D software, where we're looking at the different scales and placements of the prints and then seeing them on a 3D garment. And here we're actually able to make a full line sheet in the different colorways. So you can take the same silhouette, put different colorways on it, and check the scaling, check the placement, and maybe you find a piece of, or some yardage of fabric, or you have an idea for a print design. It's easy to do quick prototyping. Some people will even put that on Instagram, and they have a really engaged following. Hey, what do you guys think about this print on this style? Is this something you would buy? And they can get feedback on the digital sample without even having a physical product sewn up in real life. So at this stage, this is purely visualization and just sort of what if prototyping. And so people who have engaged followings, they will tell you, no, I hate that color. What if you tried it in this color instead? Or I would wear this if it was smaller. Or, people are very vocal when you ask them. So it's a great way to get feedback from the people who will be buying directly. Once the design is nailed down, then the development, this is where you start getting into the more technical side of things. So the CAD pattern making and grading, there's the screenshot here. This is the pattern development. So what are the silhouettes that you're going to cut for the body? What are the sizes that you're going to offer? And grading those so that you can fit Maybe you want to have a size range that goes from very small to very large, or maybe you want to focus on a particular body type. All of that is possible and customizable within the Tukatech software. You can do all the pre-production work like scaling and shrinkage, adding your seam allowance, truing up the corners so that it's a perfect 90 degrees. All of those little things that make a pattern really fit beautifully. You can QC them in the pattern. You can check the measurements to make sure it's going to meet the specifications for the full graded size range. Then you can use automatic marker making, which is the second screenshot below. This one is sort of in progress. But what you can then do with this digital data is lay out those pieces on the width of the fabric based on your constraints of fabric width that you have on hand, the length of the table that you're cutting on, and then the order quantities or the ratios that you're cutting with. The system will automatically lay out all those pieces to nest them very tightly together. We spend a lot of good money on fabric. It's one of the most expensive materials, but even just in the full garment construction, even factoring in labor, in some parts of the world, the fabric is more expensive than even the labor to make a garment. So we want to make sure that we are using every inch that's available. And we also don't want to be wasteful. I grew up with the saying, fabric's not like cookie dough. You can't just roll it up and roll it out again and cut more out of it. Once it's cut, it's cut. There's nothing to do with it. It's just trash. So again, we're really focusing on making sure that as much of the materials are used as possible. The 3D fit sample. So before we did more of the prototyping just to get the visual, and now we're talking more about fit. So I have some videos that show what that looks like. And production sampling, getting it, what seams are we going to use, and material requirement planning, which I won't get into much now, but that's basically accounting for all of those things, the fabric, the order, and all of the different what-if scenarios for production, so that, again, every inch of fabric is used, even if you have really complicated order scenarios, or maybe you have multiple styles that are made in the same fabric. How can we combine those into one cut order, which will give us even better fabric utilization and minimize waste? So this is the CAD software. This is where the pattern development is done. This here is what's called automatic pattern making. In this little form, you fill out measurements and it generates a pattern for you. There's also an option to utilize these templates. So existing digital patterns can be brought in or opened into the CAD, and you can use that as a starting point. So even if you're not the most technical pattern maker, there are a lot of digital resources that can be reutilized and repurposed so that you're not having to start from scratch. So that's really useful for people who aren't great pattern makers themselves. And even if you are a great pattern maker, it just cuts down on the time it takes to make a pattern for a new style if you're starting from something that already exists rather than going from scratch every time. So this software is very versatile. So you can work in this engineered way where you're utilizing previous resources, but then there's also very simple pattern making tools. So if you are the type that likes to start from a block and then plot out how you want that shape to be manipulated, it has all of those tools as well. So this is a little bit of a comparison. So this is a traditional sample room that's just piles and piles of samples compared to a 3D sample room where you're able to see the garment digitally on a fit model, see how that garment is going to fit and move, where the placement is going to be. it takes up a lot less physical space. You're not using physical materials, which just to give an idea of sample development, typically it's very common for samples for one style to need anywhere from 3 to 5 samples made during the design, the fit, and the pre-production processes. And each of those has to be made from physical materials. And because they're just prototypes, they're never going to be sold. They're basically just, it's still utilizing materials, but it's for products that are never going to be ultimately worn by a person. So this is one area where we really focus on talking about minimizing waste. And if we can cut that sample development process so that even if it's only one sample for every style that will end up being made, you still want your pre-production sample, but the design and the fit development can be done in 3D so that all of those questions can be answered before real material is utilized. This ends up being a huge time and cost savings and material savings, so that you're not utilizing the physical fabric. You're not adding to these piles and piles of samples. Okay, so here's the fork in the road. Excuse me. So up to this point, the design and the development is fairly straightforward, and whether it's happening manually or digitally, the process is relatively the same. I mean, we talked a lot about some of the benefits of a digital process and what that entails, but what you're doing is more or less the same. But then you get to the point where, okay, we're ready to make an order, we're ready to put a product in the store, or we're ready to see what's going to sell. This is where that fork in the road happens. Are we going to go the traditional manufacturing route, or are we going to go the demand manufacturing route? So the traditional manufacturing, you have to go show physical samples, get an order, produce the garments, ship or store them, and then put them up on a brick and mortar store or on your website. And then again, you're hoping that the customer buys them. And if not, you go to markdowns and clearance. On the other hand, with selling first, with demand manufacturing, you can show the samples on the website or in person. Again, that step we can even do digitally to get some feedback. And then the customer can buy based on that image, or based on that kind of showroom sample type thing. A lot of people these days are already used to e-commerce, where they see the picture and they can tell that it's something that they like and they want to see it. So then this is sort of, for all they know, there could be hundreds of that piece in inventory, or there could be nothing. For the customer, it's the same experience, but for the manufacturer side, the only inventory is the raw material. So then once you get the order, then you produce the garment and then you ship it to the customer. And one thing I want to emphasize here at this point is that even in the demand manufacturing side of things, there's not any one way to do demand manufacturing. There's many ways to make apparel on demand. There's many ways to develop and design digitally. And this depends, as I've said here on the slide, on the product, the quantities, the location. Just the types of things that are happening. Oftentimes what sort of goes in hand with demand manufacturing is a more localized way of manufacturing. So it's not so much. Sometimes people sort of get a little like, oh, can we do this? Can we do demand? Because they're picturing sort of a global model where you're making and then you're shipping all the way to the other side of the world. But this is a great way to do more localized manufacturing. And then you're actually able to fulfill orders because, or in a timely manner, because you're shipping directly to the customer. They're often a lot closer to you than they are to, you know, the giant factory overseas. So this it cuts down the footprint of how far that garment is going to travel to get to the customer. So I have, this is one case study about designing on demand. This person used the laser cutting machine. So this is the laser cutter. This is suitable for sample rooms, small batches. What it's doing is it's looking at the shape of that pattern and using that to cut it out. So here in this screenshot, you can see there's 8 different print designs for this one product. And that's something that I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. But this is done with sublimation printing, direct to fabric printing. Instead of going out to the market and finding a fabric or, you know, seeing what's out there, for people who design, or maybe they even license prints or whatever they're doing, they can print that directly to blank white fabric. And the printer doesn't know the difference, whether it's printing full yardage width to width, or whether it's printing a single item. So we're able to use this to our advantage and prepare the printing files so that we are maximizing the amount of styles that can be in one print. And again, that saves us on the amount of materials that have to be utilized, because we're able to just even print what we need. And then we're able to take advantage of maximizing fabric utilization and not wasting ink in the areas that are going to be thrown away anyway. So in this case, this was a collection that was done in 6 days. So this was for Los Angeles Swim Week. And this is just one example of what the technology can do. So Cindy Kiefer, she had her print designs done. She's an artist, but she wanted to show them on garments. And so she was able to use these digital tools. This is what the technology can do, is give designers the ability to create and have something in front of their eyes as quickly as possible. So these samples that were walking the runway, they were the only samples that ended up being made because the rest were done digitally. So this was the artwork. Again, just 6 days before the show, the only thing she had was her artwork design. And then the next step, the inspiration step, she looked at the Tuka Web Marketplace, which is a kind of a portal that we offer, that Tukatech offers, that has 3D templates and ready-made CAD patterns that can be purchased and used as the starting point. So she wasn't so much a pattern maker or so much in the fashion side, but she has an artist's eye, was able to take these templates and use them to create the garments because all of that was already done. Then in the digital space, what we did was took the print design, laid it into the shape of the pattern, and that's what was printed on the fabric. So that placement, you want for a print like this, you want to get that perfect mirror line right down the middle. Well, if you were to take a full yardage of fabric and align that right in the middle on the front and the back, you would have to line them up one next to each other from, or go this way. And all of the fabric on either side of that going to the edge would be completely wasted because you need to get that placement print. But when you do it this way, you're able to nest the pieces tightly from top to bottom, and the print can go any direction. So again, you're getting that utilization of fabric, but the artist is still able to achieve their creative vision. This is another example of one of these prints and how it was laid into the pattern, again, with that placement that we want to hit. And these are very fanned out pieces. So with placing this type of art, or placing typically the way it's done the pattern onto the art, again, you end up with a lot of wasted space. But when we reverse that process, we're able to get the best of both worlds. And this layout here was not the layout that was printed, just to be clear. This has a lot of space between. This was more for the visualization part, but the marker was a lot tighter using the same kind of technique. And then before the physical samples were even made, she was able to see that runway show, how it was going to be in 3D. So previewing how those garments were going to walk, how they were going to look, all lined up in that order, seeing how those prints were going to look at scale in the runway context. And everything up to this point, she hadn't used any physical materials. It was only digital. So only after the design is approved do we go into the sublimation printing. And this is the stage where this is the first time we're using physical materials, is when we're putting ink on fabrics. So I mentioned about placing artwork inside the marker. So this is a system that nests the pattern pieces together as tightly as possible. And then you can use something like Illustrator to embed and clip the artwork into the pattern shape. And again, because the printer doesn't know what it's printing, so you can mix a bunch of different sizes together. You can mix a bunch of different prints together. So what some companies will do is they'll just take orders throughout a designated time period, say every 24 hours, and they'll just say, okay, whatever we get by midnight, that's what we're producing tomorrow, and they'll queue it up. So it doesn't matter whether they've sold so many in one size and so many in one color, as long as everything's made in the same fabric, then the order is nested together digitally. The artwork is placed digitally. And then this is what goes to the printer. And this is what ends up being cut and then prepared for sewing in the normal way. So again, all of this white space between the pattern pieces, this is fabric that will end up being thrown away anyway. So we're not even going to waste ink printing in those areas, because it would just be wasteful to do so. We want to utilize our materials well. Then again, the laser cutting. So the cutter is looking at the outline of each of those pieces, and then the computer tells it how to cut out. It can also read CAD data. If there are certainly cases where using a full width to width fabric print is still part of the design process, the laser cutter can read CAD data from the computer as well. All right, and then this was the final result at Los Angeles Swim Week. So these large screens in the background were showing the 3D sample with the real model walking alongside her. So this was very much larger than life to be able to bring the physical and the digital together into one runway show. All right. So I have another case study that I want to share. This one is about bulk production on demand. So sometimes when we talk about demand manufacturing, there's a bit of a misconception that it only works for small batch. It's not scalable. It's not something that large scale manufacturers can use. And that's just not true. There are, like I said before, there are many ways to use this technology to support all different kinds of manufacturing models. This does require larger types of machinery. So this is one example of a fabric spreader. It takes the fabric and lays it over the cutting table. The exact number of layers, the exact length that is required to fulfill that order. And the operator doubles as a fabric inspector. So as the machine goes back and forth, they're inspecting the fabric for flaws. With the projection system, they are even able to see with a flaw, where is it going to be in the marker? So if a flaw is going to be in the cutaway piece, then the operator doesn't need to waste the time to cut it out. They can just leave it because it's not gonna affect the garment. It won't be on the garment. So it helps the operator to make good decisions in real time. The other type of machinery that is used for bulk production of this type is the high ply cutting machine. So this is able to cut very thick layers of fabric up to 9 centimeters. This machine here was cutting fleece. And I have a short video that shows more about this particular company's method. But this machine is reading computerized data. The markers are made from not just one style, but it can be made from multiple styles. So for something like this fleece material, this company sells hoodies, sweatshirts, and sweatpants, and all different types of garments made from the same fabric. So instead of creating separate orders for each garment, what they're able to do, because they do PFD goods or prepared for dyeing goods, they cut and sew plain white fabric and then they send it out for dyeing. So what they're able to do is create these mixed markers where they have sweatshirt, hoodie, sweatpants, all of these different garments, all different sizes, all into one order, because they don't have to separate their fabric by color. The color's coming later. All right. Now this is a unit production system. This is sort of an auxiliary tool for sewers. So it works with any sewing machine, even people who do QC and fabric or trimming of threads can use this. They're just part of the sewing line. And what it does is this hanger takes the bundles from sewer to sewer for each operation and creates these reports. So instead of the sewers having to physically handle all of the bundles, and they're wasting a lot of time with handling instead of being at the actual sewing machine, they're able to focus more on the productive work. All right, so this is the clips I've shown so far, and the video that I'll show in just a moment is from a company called We American. They are also based in Los Angeles. And as I mentioned, they do PFD fashion basics made on demand. So again, because they're PFD prepared for dyeing, they're able to create these mixed markers and sort of get the best of both worlds, the bulk and the demand. They, in addition, so I talked about the markers, but this unit production system with this hanger, the hanger system, they can also support multiple styles going through the same sewing line. So the operator here if he's just sewing a side seam or some kind of straight stitch, a lot of the stitches on different garments, they tend to be similar from garment to garment or from style to style. And so what the hanger system does is, with RFID and computerized mechanisms and tracking, it sends the hanger to the correct operator who can do the operation. It can even balance the line so that if this guy's getting backed up, it can send it to a different operator to make sure that no one's getting overwhelmed. Okay, so I have a short video. It's about 3 minutes where Marty Bailey discusses what they do at We American and how they do demand manufacturing for bulk production. And then at the end, it'll show that hanger system in action.
Hi, I'm Marty Bailey with TSG Apparel, a resulting company, and I'm at one of my clients, We American, which is a division of Asher Fabric Concepts here in Los Angeles. Asher is a true demand manufacturing micro factory. He runs many styles, and as long as it is the same fabric, you have the ability to spread the fabric and create markers that could involve 20 different styles on the same marker. He's only cutting what he needs at the time. Everything here is PFD, so it's not going to be dyed until after the fact, which is smart. Also utilizing the cutting technology directed straight to the INA technology, where we're able to put one complete garment on a hanger and sew that garment completely through. This is a 40-station INA system. We have machines strategically positioned that we can run multiple styles at the same time through the system, simply by directing them not to a specialized operator, but to a specific machine that's required to perform that operation. So the operators could be sewing 10 different styles at the same time.
First of all, I think the morale has increased. Employees are very excited to see the machine. I think they can see where we're going. The one that we see a huge difference was the cutting. The Tuka cutter, it's amazing. And also it helps a lot so the employees don't get so tired. The machine does all the work. It's beautiful.
If you see over my shoulder, one thing you don't see is a lot of work in process, and that's huge for companies today. The only work in process you see is on the hangers. Within a 5-minute cycle, those garments will be off the hangers and complete and ready to go to the dye house. What Asher has the luxury of right now through technology is the ability to look at what he sold yesterday. He can look at that this morning. He can create multiple cut orders on the same fabric spreads and have it in production, this afternoon and on its way to the dye house by the end of the day. So when you're looking at demand manufacturing, which we're looking at 48 to 72 hour turn from order to delivery, he has a real ability to achieve that through the technology that he's implemented here at We American.
So that's We American. And one thing I want to stress now that we're kind of getting to the end of the presentation and we'll be moving into Q&A. I talked about a lot of different types of technology CAD, the 3D, the marker making, and then all of the equipment. But there isn't any one way, and it doesn't all have to be implemented all at once. So it's very flexible, this type of technology, fashion technology, for whether you are more on the design and development side or moving into the manufacturing side. It's very flexible. The same tools are easy enough for students all over the world to learn how to use them in the classroom. And that same tool is used to support large scale production like what you just saw. So I think we're going to move into Q&A now. I'll stop sharing my screen so that we can see more of the face. And I'll put the link to that YouTube video in the chat, just in case it did get a little choppy for anybody. They can go and review it after, and hopefully benefit from that. So thank you all so far for listening to the presentation, and now I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Savannah. That was a great presentation.
Thank you.
You've given us a lot to think about and to see. So just before we start and open up the floor, you're most welcome to post your Q&As or to raise your hand, and we'll unmute you to ask your question. One of the things that we wanted to get out of this session is to understand from the audience, is this technology useful? Are you interested in it? And what are the challenges or the opportunities that you might foresee in adopting this type of technology in the East Africa region? So please feel free, jump in or just raise your hands as you please. And maybe just to kick off, so Savannah, I had some questions from myself as a layman or lay lady. My first one is, so I really like to see the design side and the print and the being able to design your own styles. What is required though in terms of, so I design it, I CAD it, I put it on my markers, but then I need to send it somewhere to have it produced. So what would be the best service provider that I could send it to in order to have it produced? And do we have any in East Africa that you're aware of?
The type of person that you would want to send this to is somebody who does cut, make, and sew. So this would be a vendor or a factory who has the ability to, who has this type of equipment. So if you're more on the design side and you've got your ideas and you've got all these files ready, you need somebody who can take them and then put them into a cutting machine. So that type of large scale manufacturing, or even people who do smaller scale services. We have a customer in San Diego, California, who they have a small micro factory of their own where they do sublimation printing and laser cutting for their own. They do like festival fashion and they're doing that on demand. Well, then they already have this equipment. They were able to offer that as a service. So they just take the artwork from designers and they print it onto fabric and they send the fabric back. So there's all kinds of things like that people will find their niche. That's even a service that maybe some people in this audience might like to offer to people. Maybe they want to be the person who takes that CAD design and makes it into a reality.
Great, I've got some hands up. Richard Ngamba, Karibu. Richard, just check if you can unmute yourself, please.
Oh, I think he put it in the chat. Oh, didn't raise my hand.
Oh, okay. Sorry your hand is still up. Just try and put it down. Joseph, I see you have your hands up.
Very much. Savannah, my question is, how compatible is the Tukatech software if I have it as a designer, or if I'm a manufacturer who has invested in maybe some digital printing of fabric? How compatible is it with any type of digital printing, or are there specific equipment that they also need to have for them to use this software?
So for digital printing, we are, as Tukatech as a company, we're pretty agnostic when it comes to digital printing compatibility. We have done, even just in some of our own showcases, we've done some of these micro factory demand manufacturing presentations at like trade shows, for example. We've worked with many different digital printer providers, Mamaki, Kornit, Muto, and pretty much any machine our software can drive. The printing specifically, we're taking our marker data from our software and we're putting that into Illustrator. So from the designer's perspective, a lot of people are already used to working in Illustrator. We're just giving them another type of, not even a type of file, but just another way of working, so they can prepare their artwork just the same as for the printer. They prepare it just the same as they normally would. The only difference is some of the data they're getting from the design side is more optimized. And then beyond just the digital printing, TukaCAD, and all of the software that we develop is very compatible to even other cutting machines. Some people in manufacturing, they've invested in spreaders, they've invested in cutters, these large types of equipment, and they'll switch to our software, but it still will run. It's still running the same. It's able to drive the machines without having to swap everything out. So we're very big on being an open system. Even people who are using other CAD systems, maybe their manufacturer isn't a Tukatech, maybe they're not using Tukatech and they're using some other, they can still work compatibly, because we try to be very open just to make it easy for people to transfer that data.
So I have a follow-on question on that. You said the system comes in different components. If I'm a designer and all I want to use the system for is for product development and sizing, so I can get my sizes out, I get my patterns, how would I implement that in my world, especially if I'm a very small business? And how much would it cost me just for that part of the support, service?
Yeah, that's actually a very accessible little set of technology that we offer. So the CAD software and the 3D visualization software, both of those are available on monthly subscription. So the CAD, that 2D pattern making, and then the graded sizing, and even some aspects of the marker making, that's available starting at $19 a month for the Learning Edition. Professional Edition goes up to $199 a month, and that includes everything for all of the most advanced features for production. But then the 19 is very good for people who are just starting out and just want to learn how it works. They want to try out making some patterns. It's a very simple tool to pick up. We even have online training courses and built-in video help, so it's easy to just get started and get going. The 3D visualization, so that application that I talked about at the beginning, where you can take templates, these 3D templates, and then just visualize how different artwork is going to look. That software is available monthly for $29 a month. That one also has courses and video help. Now, the templates for that There are some built-in, some sort of core classic silhouettes, things like t-shirts and leggings, but we also have more silhouettes available for just $5 per template. So that's available online, and that's kind of just as people need. They can go search. We have all different types of styles available online, everything from cocktail dresses to different types of ethnic wear available for very inexpensive. So for designers that are just starting out, those are really great tools to get started and start the visualization, and then have something tangible that they could take to a manufacturer, or even, you know, if they're doing a little in-house shop on their own, there's even ways that they can print their patterns on even a home printer if they're really just starting out, and they can do it that way and build as they start growing their business.
So my next question is to Nimco, actually, because you, from a production perspective, you've used the software before, I assume, in your facilities. How has it enhanced your collection and your ability to produce for your customers?
Well, let me just say, being a nomad designer, you know, every 2 months I'm in different continent, and actually I'm in South Korea right now, and I'm making something. I'm not losing customers, and I'm shipping it to Dubai. It's coming to Kenya. I have my laptop here, and I'm just, you know, manipulating my measurements. I use the APM, that's the automatic pattern making. I just reduce and just the length and the width, the whole thing about the bodies. It's really, it's a savior for me. It's my time. I don't need to worry. It saves my work. I can go anywhere, coffee shop. I can work. There's something like I don't have to carry patterns anymore. I can print anywhere in the world. In Kenya, it was a bit of a problem, and in Tanzania, because you need those plotters, but we have a lot of companies that are using it, but you know, they're very exclusive, so they won't share. I wanted to kind of bring people in Nairobi to, you know, showcase the stuff, but I guess they don't want to share that, and I understand the privacy. But I'm hoping definitely to have something in Kenya where I can, you know, like an incubator, or, you know, to bring the machines up in the future. It's happening in Mogadishu at the moment, but Kenya and, you know, Tanzania would be my main focus. But it's really, I take my swatches, which I can show you guys. I have tons of swatches everywhere. Sorry. I just carry, you know, all the swatches, and I scan them, and I can visualize 50 design within an hour. And I send it to the customer, and I'm like, these are the content of the fabric, this is tencel, this is hemp, this is that. And it's just, I work with the customer. So it's the value that you put into the time. It's, you know, it's the same thing. I don't need to buy fabrics. Once they okay the style and the fabrication, and I give them the content, I'm like, yeah, this is what it is. And that's it. It's just a matter of sending the pattern, printing it out, and give it to the sewer anywhere in the world. It's working right now. So it's really something that is good for my watu wangu, because a lot of fundis, when you give them, fundis are tailors, Savannah. We need to learn those words. Anyway, so when you give the tailors, we have an issue of the armhole, definitely the bust, the across and the back chest. They don't understand the shrinkage fabrics, you know. So sometimes like with Tukatech, there is a way you can input the fabric and you can control the shrinkage. You can know the percentage and all that stuff. So if you don't come from that technical or the manufacturing, it's not something, but you're very creative. But those are the little details that you don't know. So with Tukatech, it's really easy and it's safe. And then when it comes to grading, a lot of people don't know grading in Africa and around the world too, even here in Korea. So when you have the APM, it's literally as blink of your eye. It's like, wow, you have all your perfect. measurements from small to, XXL or, whatever sizes. So you can print them right away. The fit is everything. You can have the most beautiful fabric. It doesn't matter, expensive, even it's like $200 a yard. But if the fit is not right, there's no business there. So the reason why I'm really excited is to bring this to Tuango. It's because we have amazing textile. We have prints. Every country in Africa, with the tribes, with the villages, we can dig into our culture and bring the ancestors out, what they used to wear, and put it on the fabric. Hopefully we'll have, I'm sure there are machines in Kenya that can do sublimation, or, they can print. There are. You just need to work with the factories. Maybe, Antoinette, you can guide, whoever is here on that. But this is done. It's something that is just a matter of collaboration and talking to each other and communicating. We have this, we have that. And, it's time for Africa. That's what I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Nimco. Some inspirational words there. I have a hand up. I'm going to bring it back to you. I think it's Kemi. Can you unmute yourself, please? Karibu.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the presentation, Savannah. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So what I wanted to know is, in terms of, let's say, a challenge that we've been finding is young designers not knowing pattern making, which we are working on getting a school. The school has to happen at some point. But let's say the designers don't know, most designers, I can say 90% of designers in Tanzania don't know how to do pattern making. So if they wanted to use the software, which I feel is so amazing in terms of creating your clothes online, do they need pattern making? Do they need to study pattern making first before they can actually use it?
Yes. We have a similar issue in the States as well. It sadly, the art of pattern making is sort of becoming a little bit of a dying art. There's sort of the previous generation of pattern makers that had that artisan hand and eye, and they knew exactly how to get those curves just right. And it was something that you would learn sort of in an apprenticeship in a lot of ways. And we work with a lot of schools to try to fill that gap. And thankfully, that's been pretty successful over the last few years, implementing that knowledge into curriculum so that students are prepared. But that being said, as important as education is, there still is the reality that clothes need to be made now, and we can't always wait for people to kind of catch up. So the software, to make a pattern from scratch, even in the Tukatech software, you still do need to understand the principles. You still need to know what a good armhole shape looks like, and how to true a pattern and how to balance it well. Those things still, that expertise, that eye still needs to be there. The tools make it a lot simpler to make something and iterate and get it very precise. But you still do have to have an understanding of what a sleeve looks like, let's say. A lot of the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years on a couple of different fronts is to address this challenge with that skills gap. That's where tools like the APM, the automatic pattern making system that Nima mentioned, where you enter your pattern specifications and it creates a pattern for you, graded, then you can take that and just make small modifications. That was made specifically to address this problem of a lot of people, even people who go through fashion schools and have that pattern exposure, the mindset's like, okay, if I see a shirt pattern, then I can take it and I can modify it and make it how I want to be. But I don't have the skill to get it started. So that's kind of the idea. That's also the idea behind the templates, getting people tools to get started that then they can manipulate. So yeah, we're definitely aware of that challenge. And that's something that we seek to address on the education side, and also some sort of front loading of resources to make it easy for people to get started.
Yeah, and I was actually wondering because having worked and tried to get fashion designers to learn this kind of software, one of the other challenges that we found was maybe the capacity for the computers. So I don't know in terms of the capacity, like what capacity the computer, because most people would have like the normal laptop and not. So we ended up thinking that maybe the way to do it is to work with graphic designers, because graphic designers already have computers that are of that capacity. Another thing is just tech savviness. So finding ways to get people to be more tech savvy, because most people, you know, when you use your laptop, you're using it maybe to just send an email. So do you have anything in terms of, the reason why I was asking about the pattern making also was that, okay, if we decided to take this software and teach it to graphic designers, then I was trying to wonder, okay, that means maybe that may not work if they don't know pattern making. Is there anything that we can do, like in terms of finding a way to do that link? And before, what we had thought is maybe having a designer sit next to the graphic designer, because the designer doesn't know how to use, you know, software. They only use it for 2 or 3 things in terms of their laptops. So if they could use it, if they could work with a graphic designer, then maybe that may help. And if you could develop more the thing of, okay, somebody just tweaks a pattern instead of starting from scratch, because that seems to be the thing that's stopping a lot of people from moving forward. And we want to leapfrog the situation. We want to just say, okay, you know what, just forget about learning pattern making, even though you should, but let it not stop you from actually using the software and creating these amazing designs, because you see designers sketching, and sometimes some of the sketches I see from my students, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got no idea what this is. And so how is a factory supposed to understand? How is your tailor supposed to understand? So a technology like this makes it that, you know, you can get a client to approve the design that you're giving them just from the drawing there, because just from the software, because now you've got a 3D image, so somebody can see, oh yes, this is exactly what I want. Can you tweak here? Can you tweak here? Unlike doing something by hand. So it's in a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful software.
Thank you.
We just need to see how to work around it for the Tanzania market, and I think it's very possible.
Yeah, and I want to encourage you. So we talked first about sort of one side of the industry that is they're a lot more tech savvy, but they don't necessarily have the technical pattern making skills. The other side of the people that we work with in this particular pattern making software is exactly what you're talking about. They do know how to make patterns, and they're wizards with pen and paper, but they don't use their computer for much other than, like you said, checking email. And when we've done trainings with people where day one is, this is the mouse, you click with the left button and here's how you move it around. Here's how you move the cursor around. Sometimes that's day one. And within a week that auntie is making her patterns there on the computer, and she feels very confident because she's learned that she can do it. She can learn this new skill. And beyond just the training, the software itself, it's very pictorial. So, if you want to pick up your tape measure physically, you just pick it up, and the same in the software. You click the button that looks like the tape, and now you have tape in your hands. So it's very intuitive that way. And there are built-in videos that explain step-by-step how to use each tool. So that has been another side of the coin that we try to address, are the people who aren't computer literate. And we've had some really amazing stories of in lots of different places, people who their first time using the computer was Tukatech.
Thank you.
Okay, I can add into this. Tammy, how are you?
Hi.
Right. It's very important, you can have something on 2D, but I think the best thing, because, I teach pattern making sometimes, and I tell my students, I'm on, online, and I'm like, okay, stand up. You need to teach them how to engineer the human body, to understand the POM, the points of measurements of the body. It's really important. Once they are comfortable, so when they see it and decide using the computer, they'll remember, oh, my shoulder is supposed to be from here to here, 15. They'll understand, like, where is my waist? From high point shoulder to my waist, it should be 15 and a half. My waist, it should be 28 or whatever. So they'll understand those numbers when it comes as they move forward with pattern making by measurement. First of all, you let the students measure each other and call out on the number. When you're calling out, it's like, oh, her bust is 32 or 34. Okay, write that down. High point shoulder, waist, hips, get all the basic, and then let them use a computer, and then they'll start seeing the formation of the pattern. And then it will lead into the grading. They'll understand you only need a size extra small to small, half an inch grading or 1 inch grading. So a plus size body and a small size, it's a 2 inches or maybe 1.5 grading. So you can control. Every company has their own grading system. So they need to start measuring the body. That's the most crucial part. They need to understand the sleeve length, what it is from shoulder to where, half sleeve, cup sleeve, all that kind of stuff. So that's my advice. Start with it. Measurements.
Yeah, definitely. We've been doing that. And you can see how somebody who's been designing for 3 years, 4 years has never actually figured out that, hey, there is something called patterns, which is basically even fundis, because we do this with also tailors as well. So teaching tailors how to actually create patterns, because our hope is to get designers in Tanzania to create ready to wear and not only to sell in Tanzania. So this software is one of the things that will leapfrog us to that possibility of small designers, but also them learning pattern making is a huge part of what we're trying to do. And we're working towards that so that they can now translate that into software.
Okay, great.
So just a couple of thoughts. We're almost to the end of the session. We started a bit late, so we allowed the extension. Maybe just some areas of clarification, Nimco and Savannah. You mentioned that you do have a package for education, because as you can see from the audience, the demand for learning pattern making is quite high in the region. Is there room for Tukatech to provide some sort of support at the educational institution level to advance the adoption of this technology, of course, in collaboration with ourselves and with other stakeholders on the call? And finally, if you wanted to take the conversation forward, how do the different participants contact you?
Yeah, so to answer the first question, we support a lot of the universities. We sit on the board for many of the universities in all different parts of the world, not just the US, but we also have a very large presence in places like India, and we've helped them develop their curriculum around technology so that the students, when they get to the end of their degree, they've at least been exposed to the technology, even if they themselves aren't the ones who are going to sit and make patterns. They know what a pattern should look like. So we advise universities and when they're developing their curriculum so that they are implementing the technology into the curriculum in a way that makes sense so that the students are ready to add value to the industry as soon as they graduate. And if anybody listening is interested in getting more information, we have our website, tukatech.com, which has all of this listed out. You can read about it. There's more information there. Our YouTube channel is a wonderful resource, especially for things like software demos and tutorials. So go to YouTube and search for Tukatech. And also Tuka Talks, which is the podcast that the founder of the company does, which is really great for some more of the process management type things and the more business related. Those are two really good resources. And then if you would like to get directly in contact, you can send me an email at savannahc@tukatech.com. And I will be happy to answer or connect you with somebody who can.
Fantastic. So just a couple of last words from my co-host.
As we conclude, first, thank you, Savannah, for taking the time, but also thanking the audience for listening in. It will really help if we get some feedback from the audience. We are posting a link. Just take 60 seconds of your time to complete those questions. They're really easy. That will help us at least get some feedback from the audience who are here today. Let me know if you can see the link. All right, it's already up. So please just take a moment to complete.
Let's see it. Oh, okay, great. And so as Gatsby Africa, we're really excited to be able to bring these type of solutions to the wider audience, but we do recognize that there are multiple solution providers out there. So if you have any additional questions, if you think that there's a topic that we should be showcasing, please do contact us through the links and through the invite that you got from Joseph. And if there's others that you think need to hear this the story of Tukatech, please ask them to contact, please get in touch with us, and we can always organize a second one or share the recording once it's been edited for public use. So without further ado, I want to thank my team. I want to thank the Tukatech team for taking the time, and also to thank all of you today who joined us on an early Friday morning, late for some. Savannah, I know it's almost midnight where you are. And just to say that together we can make it happen. And thank you, and wishing you a fantastic weekend ahead.
Thank you.